Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, Steven's going to be teaching you the theme song to the TV show Severance. Now, if you're watching this video on the day we release it, tonight is the very last episode of Season 2. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but it is going to be an epic episode. So after you finish watching Season 2, you can jump into learning this arrangement, and let's talk about it. So the thing that I love the most about this tune is that it has such an eerie sound to it, a very haunting sound, which fits the vibe of the show perfectly. And for this arrangement, I've got to give props to Steven for writing something that fits so well on the ukulele. I think from a playing standpoint, this is probably going to be best suited for the seasoned intermediate player. There's a lot going on. You've got some harmonics at the end. You've got a little bit of strumming with this cool little tap technique, which he'll talk about in the lesson. Plus, of course, a lot of fingerstyle playing throughout. So there's a lot to take away from this arrangement, and I think it's going to be perfect for the seasoned intermediate player. With that said, let's take a step back. Let's talk about this lesson. So in this video, which is our part 1 lesson, Steven's going to be teaching you the first half of the tune. If you want to learn the second half, which he'll be teaching in the part 2 lesson, you can do so by clicking that link right there, or going to the site rockclass101.com, doing a search for the song's name. Now also on that page will be the tabs that you can print off to follow along with, plus the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. Now this is a great feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tabs scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish, just a great asset in learning this tune that much easier. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Steven to teach you how to play this. Don't forget to grab the low G ukulele, and I'll catch you at the end of the video.
Hi everyone, in this week's lesson we're learning the theme tune to the hit TV show Severance. Now if you haven't seen the show, you might listen to this piece and think it sounds very modern, very edgy and quite unsettling in places. And if you have seen the TV show, then you'll probably still think all of those things, but you will completely understand why. All of that dissonance is absolutely intentional. So without giving away any spoilers, this TV show is very mysterious. All is not as it seems, and something kind of very wrong is going on. Now, when you understand that, this becomes one of the best themes for a TV show I think I've ever heard. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some great TV show themes out there, but do they completely capture the essence of the show? Well, not always. This one does though. This is a genius composition from Theodore Shapiro. And if you haven't seen the show, then it's definitely worth a watch if you have access to it. So onto the lesson. This piece is in 4/4 time, and some of the rhythms are a little bit tricky in places. So to help with that, you could definitely practice this one along to a metronome if you want to get that rhythm really tight. But if you listen to the performance video a good few times and kind of really get familiar with this piece, then I think you should be able to play it by feel. It's worth noting as well that I've changed the key just to make it work a little bit better on the ukulele. In the original key, everything happens over this continuous C note in the bass. But to allow this arrangement to kind of make the most of all 4 strings, I've changed the key so that C note becomes the open G. So just bear that in mind if you try and play along with the original, that's why it'll sound off. Okay, so make sure you've got your low G ukulele and let's get into it. So we'll look at the first 3 measures together, so they should sound like this. Okay, so the rhythm for all 3 measures is the same. We just play on beat 1 and on beat 3. And their structure is also the same in that we play a chord on beat 1, followed by the open G on beat 3. So for measure 1, that chord is a G minor, which is 5 on the A, 6 on the E, 7 on the C. So we play all 3 strings together on beat 1. And I'm playing those with my index, middle and ring finger on my picking hand. And then we hold that chord for the whole measure just so it can ring out through the rest of the measure. And then when we get to beat 3, we just hit that open G with our thumb. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so although this G minor chord does have a kind of darker sound to it, kind of being a minor chord, it's still perfectly consonant in its sound. But when we move into measure 2, we're going to play this D flat over G chord, which is 8 on the A, 9 on the E, 8 on the C. Okay, so when we hit that on beat 1, we get that dissonance. Okay, and then when we add the open G on beat 3, which has absolutely no place next to that D flat chord, that just gives us even more tension in this measure. Real dissonance there, okay. But then when we move into measure 3, we get instant relief. We just move this chord down 1 fret to the 7th fret, so it's now a C major. We hit those 3 strings on beat 1, and then this open G on beat 3. Feels right at home with that C chord, so we're back to consonants. Okay, so we'll look at the next measure in more detail shortly, but what we're going to move into is this E flat minor over G chord. Again with that open G, so we're back to some serious dissonance in that measure there. Okay, so we alternate between consonants to dissonance, back to consonants, and then dissonance. And that 4 chord sequence is the basis for this entire piece. Okay, so measures 1 to 3, once again, should sound like this. Okay, so let's have a go at playing those 3 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll look at measures 4 and 5 next. They should sound like this. Okay, so the rhythm for measure 4 is 1, 3 and 4 and. So beat 1 is this E flat minor over G chord where we're going to bar across the A, the E and the C at the 6th fret with our first finger, and we hit those 3 strings on beat 1. And then on beat 3, we start this run of 8th notes. And these A string notes are melody, so we want to hear these just with decent volume as we pick them. So on beat 3, we're going to put the pinky onto the A string at the 9th fret. And then we'll probably take that bar off with the first finger as we do that. And then we pick that A string with the open G. You can hear that dissonance there straight away with those 2 notes. And then on the and of beat 3, we drop this A string down to the 8th fret and the 3rd finger will do that. So pinky comes off. And then on beat 4, we drop it down to the 5th fret on the A. First finger will take that, 3rd finger comes off. And then we put it back on at the 8th fret, but we'll use the pinky this time to play that 8th fret note. And that finishes that measure. So just that measure real dissonance in that measure there. Okay, so if we take it into measure 5, we're then going to start on beat 1 with this double stop of E string at the 6th with our second finger, and C string at the 7th with our third finger. And this double stop is part of this G minor chord that we're going to build back up for this measure. So beat 1 is just that double stop of the E and the C, but we'll keep our pinky held there on the A string of the 8th so that melody notes can keep on ringing into this measure. And then straight after that double stop on the and of beat 1, we now drop the melody down to the A string 5th. So first finger goes on to complete that G minor chord, pinky comes off, and then we pick that A string at the 5th on the and of beat 1. So if I play just up until that point, from the start of measure 4 up to the and of beat 1 there of measure 5, we would have okay. And then once we've hit that A string 5th on the and of beat 1, we just let that ring over beat 2, and then on beat 3 we keep this G string open kind of bass note going in this measure there. So that's on beat 3, we just hit that open G. So both of measures 4 and 5 together once again. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those two measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the next 4 measures are just repeats of measures that we've seen already. So measures 6, 7, 8 and 9 are just the same as measures 2, 3, 4 and 5. Okay, so they should sound like this. Okay, so that takes us to the end of measure 9. When we go into measure 10, we're going to play this double stop of C string 8th and E string 9th. So it's essentially the same as measure 2 really, but we're just not going to play that A string note. Okay, so when we hit that double stop on beat 1, I tend to give it a little bit of a vibrato sound just to kind of emulate what happens in the original tune. So when you hit that double stop on beat 1, just kind of rock the hand back and forth on those strings to get that vibrato sound. And then on beat 3 we hit our open G as we usually do. Okay, and then into measure 11 we drop that double stop down 1 fret so it's in the C position, and again we hit those 2 strings with that vibrato sound, and then again the open G on beat 3. And then into measure 12, we drop this down into the E flat minor position. So we'll use probably the 2nd and 3rd fingers there on the E and the C at the 6th fret. So we hit that double stop on beat 1. Again, we'll give it that vibrato sound. And then again, the open G on beat 3. So if I play measures 10, 11 and 12 once again, they would sound like this. Nice. So let's have a go at playing those 3 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we move on now to this really cool sounding descending melody section. So if we look at just measures 13 and 14 together first of all, they should sound like this. Okay, so the rhythm again is a little bit funky for these two, but I would go for the kind of just playing it by feel approach once you're very familiar with this piece. So the rhythm for measure 13 is 1 and 2 and 4 and. So beat 1 is this A string at the 12th fret, which we'll hold with the pinky, and then we play that with the open G. Then the and of beat 1, we drop this down to the A string at the 10th. The 3rd finger will take that. And just keep in mind, when we put this finger on, This is going to stay on that A string 10th now for the rest of these 4 measures. So for this whole section that we're going to look at, that finger just stays planted on that A string 10th. Okay, so we pick that on the end of beat 1. And then on beat 2, we're going to add our second finger onto the E string at the 10th, and then we pick that. Okay, that rings over beat 3, and then on the and of beat 3, we go back to the A string at the 12th. Keep these 2 fingers on. Pinky goes back onto the A string 12th, so we pick that. Then on beat 4, we want to drop that down to the A string 10th once again, so the pinky comes off, but our third finger is still on there, like I mentioned, so we pick that on beat 4. And then we're going to drop this melody note on the E string at the 10th down to the 9th. So the first finger goes onto the E string 9th, second finger comes off, and then we pick that note to complete that measure. Okay, so a little bit going on in that measure. I'll play it again quite slowly. Okay, so if we then take that into measure 14, we don't play on beat 1 and beat 2. This just rings from measure 13 into the start of measure 14. Our first note that we play is the and of beat 2. Okay, so keep these 2 fingers on, and then our first note of this measure 14, this and of beat 2, is the A string at the 12th. So the pinky goes back onto that A string 12th. And then we let that ring for a beat. And then on the and of beat 3, we come back to this A string 10th. So the pinky comes off, but our third finger is still on there. So we pick that on the and of beat 3. And then beat 4, we just play this E string 9th, which is already in position with our first finger. Okay, so just that measure 14 sounds like this. And then if I put it together again with measure 13, we would have... Okay, and if I play those a little bit slower with the count, it would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, so let's have a go at playing those 2 measures through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for measures 15 and 16, we're going to continue this descending melody line, and the rhythm for these 2 measures is actually the same as the previous 2 measures. So although it's a bit of a tricky rhythm, if you've sort of got your head round it in the previous section, it's just that same rhythm again now for these 2 measures. So measures 15 and 16 should sound like this. Okay, so at the end of measure 14, we were holding the A string at the 10th with our third finger and the E string at the 9th with our first finger. So what we're going to do as we go into measure 15, we're going to put the pinky back onto the A string 12th, and we're going to play that with the open G on beat 1, so the 2 outer strings together. And then the and of beat 1, like we did in measure 13, we'll drop this down to the 10th fret on the A string. Our third finger's still on there, like it is for these entire 4 measures. So pinky comes off, we play that A string 10th on the and of beat 1. But then on beat 2, we're going to continue this descending melody. So this 9th fret with our first finger just moves down 1 fret to the 8th, and then we pick that on beat 2. So those 3 notes so far. Okay, and then on the and of beat 3, our pinky goes back onto that A string 12th. And then on beat 4, take that pinky off, A string 10th. And then the and of beat 4 to complete this measure 15. Leave the first finger on where it is, but we're now going to add the second finger onto the C string at the 10th, and then pick that on the and of beat 4. Okay, so that measure 15, one and two and three and four and... Okay, then into measure 16, similar to measure 14, we don't play for beats 1 and 2. This C string 10th from measure 15 just rings into this measure. And then on the and of beat 2, we go back to our A string 12th. Pinky goes on. Let that ring for a beat and then take it off so we can play the A string 10th on the and of beat 3. And then finish the measure on beat 4 with that C string 10th. Okay, so measures 15 and 16 once again. And then a little bit slower with the count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, so let's have a go at playing measures 15 and 16 through together now. 1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, guys, so a big congrats on getting the first half of this arrangement down. If you'd like to learn the second half, he's going to be teaching that in the part 2 lesson, which you can watch by clicking this link right here, or going to the site rockclass101.com and doing a search for the song's name. Don't forget too, on that page was the tabs that you can print off to keep for your records, plus that really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer. So you can literally hit play, watch that tab scroll across in real time, highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, I hope you enjoyed learning the first half, and we'll catch you in the part 2 lesson. Take care.